How much time have we got here? We're two more. We got two more questions. We got two more questions, folks, so they better be humdingers.
Yes. Welcome to Brampton.
Thank you.
I'm Raj from Mr. Mully's writing. I want to ask you many questions, but only one question I'm going to ask you is, I'm a Tamil Canadian. I want to ask you Sri Lanka's war crimes and human rights violations and Tamil people's political solution. What do you have for them as a Liberal Party leader? Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, the Tamil community in Canada has been through a terribly hard time, not to be compared with the sufferings of the Tamil community in Sri Lanka. The war is now over. The war is now over. What I think that a Canadian government can and should do is do something that we had a question earlier about Sudan. We had a question about Libya. It's the same answer to all these questions. We have to shine the spotlight of Canada on Sri Lanka, because they need to, the Sri Lankan government needs to know someone's watching. There are Tamils in camps. There's ongoing discrimination. There's ongoing suffering of the Tamil population. I can't promise you miracles here. What I can promise is a Liberal government trains the spotlight on the Sri Lankan government and says, we are watching. Don't start disappearing people. Don't start abusing people. Don't start denying access to humanitarian agencies. We are watching. One of the things that Canada can do in these situations, we can't do miracles, but we can train the spotlight of a government's attention and say, this is not right. We had a question earlier in the day about Iran. Train the spotlight. Question about Sudan. Train the spotlight. Question about Sri Lanka. Train the spotlight. So that Tamils, both in Canada and in Sri Lanka, don't feel alone. Don't feel that their issue is being neglected. When Canada raises its voice and denounces human rights overseas, that puts pressure on the Sri Lankan government. And I can commit to you that we will shine the spotlight of a Liberal government's attention on Sri Lanka to try and protect your people. Thank you for the question. All right. We got one more question. Now, where is that coming from? The question is here. And then we gotta wrap it up here. Now here's this better be good here. You're the last guy out.
It'll be a good one. It'll be a good one. We're here today because our government and the representatives of the governing party were found in contempt of not just Parliament, but of the people of this country. Can you please tell us, Mr. Ignatieff, what yourself and the Liberal Party of Canada plan to do to address the democratic deficit that has developed in this country over the last 5 years? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I'll use that question to bring our meeting to an end. But let me just say just a few things. One of the things we're doing is what we're doing tonight. One of the things we're doing about the democratic deficit is doing politics this way. I didn't have a clue what questions I'd be asked. I'm completely surprised by the questions I was asked. And as I said, I haven't got any choice here. I have to answer your questions to the best of my ability. And that's the start, an expression of democratic respect for the people who come to public meetings. Unlike conservative candidates who don't even bother to show up. Unlike Mr. Harper, who takes 5 questions from the press and walks off if there's a 6th. Unlike a Prime Minister who doesn't allow people to ask questions in his meetings. Will throw someone out of a meeting if they have someone on their Facebook that he doesn't like. Will deny access to a meeting to a veteran for fear that the veteran might ask him a challenging question about their veterans policy. I just think this is deeply undemocratic and deeply wrong and has to stop. So we want to advocate open government. What does open government mean? It means turn on the taps of access to information instead of turning them off. Dump all the documents. Dump documents online so that every government department is under an obligation to justify non-disclosure. That is, the burden of proof is, why not release it, right? We have to change that default setting of our government. Then we have to change our relationship with the press. The press have a role here. There isn't a day when I don't want to throw the paper across the room because they said something about me I can't stand, but they got a job to do. Mr. Harper has muzzled the press, intimidated the press for 5 years, and the press has a role to play in our democracy. So that's another thing we have to do. Then just, going on, I'm not going to go on all night, but one thing we need to do, which we think is a good idea, is we need to have a people's question period. People's question period means that every week, a Liberal government will have to answer questions, unscripted and unfiltered, online from the Canadian public. And and these guys who are going to be in government are going to have to get up there and answer the questions. If you don't like the answers, they're going to be in trouble. And they're going to be in trouble with me too. And then I have to show up as Prime Minister and I have to answer questions. And then I have to do town hall meetings like this as Prime Minister. I have to get up there and you've got a question, I got to answer. So all of this expresses a very different philosophy of how an elected official relates to our fellow citizens. And we got to remember simple stuff about democracy which we forget. He's got one vote, and you got one vote, and you got one vote, and I got one vote. Nobody has more votes than one. We're all equal here. And this election is going to be decided by the people of Canada. I mean, that's how it's going to go. And we got 13 days left. And we got to tell Canadians this is a choice between two competing visions of Canada. And we've got to tell a story to our Canadian citizens about what's happened to our country in the last 2 years. Because Canadians have got a lot more important things to think about than what's happening in Ottawa. But let's tell them in the next 13 days what has been happening in Ottawa. He shut down Parliament twice. He's the first Prime Minister in the history of the country found in contempt of Parliament. When a veterans ombudsman, a man who speaks up on behalf of veterans, protested government policy, he was fired. When a nuclear regulator who's charged to regulate our nuclear industry disagreed with the government, she was fired. When a public servant got up and said there's something going wrong in Afghanistan, he was smeared. When a member of the Conservative caucus had some baseless allegations made against her by some second-rate gumshoe, she was thrown out of caucus. And the Prime Minister didn't have the guts to apologize for the mistake he made. That's not strong leadership, that's weak leadership. And then you think... of other decisions that just seem kind of, and they're just individual points, and left to themselves, nobody kind of adds them up into a pattern. But last summer they decided to abolish the long-form census and said, the census taker was a threat to your liberties. You've got lots of things to worry about in your life, but I bet a dime a dozen you never worried once about the census taker. And suddenly they try and attack a respected Canadian institution which collects facts about Canadians in order to make our public policy better. So it was an attack not just on the census, it was an attack on facts, on evidence, on science, on thoughtfulness in public policy. It was just the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my years in public life. And then it goes on and on. And you get to a situation where suddenly we're in an election campaign and a Prime Minister is denying access to a public meeting to a 19-year-old woman who happens to be wearing a hijab and happens to have a Facebook page that Conservative Party operatives went to the trouble to scan everybody in the room to see whether there was anybody with a Facebook page they didn't like, and then they threw her out of a meeting. And Canadians are thinking to themselves, where are we here? Is this Canada? And it begins to accumulate. All these stories begin to accumulate into one big story, which is this man is abusing the power that was given to him, yes, you pointed to yourself, by the Canadian people. The power that Mr. Harper was given by the Canadian people. Well, it's time to take it back. It's time to take it back. We're all in this room. We're all in this room united by a common sense of unease. Something's gone wrong here in this country. The Canada that you came to, the Canada that you were born in, the Canada that you love, something's going wrong here. It's not right what's going on here. It's more than just a series of mistakes or dumb actions. There's something deeply wrong about what this government is doing. That's why there are so many people coming to our meetings. That's why so many people are coming to listen to what we have to say. Because they think that something is wrong here. Something has to change. Something has to be fixed. This is not now a matter of just disciplining Mr. Harper or sending him a message or reducing his power by reducing the number of votes he's got. It's time to replace this government. It's time to change this government. It's time to get rid of this government. That's why about 4 or 5 days ago, I was just humming to myself. You know, the way you do, you know, some song comes into your head that you had on your iPod and you kind of forgot about it, and somehow this song came into my head. You know, I began to think about why this song kept coming back into my mind, this song by Bruce Springsteen. I found myself repeating it all the time, and suddenly it came to me, the words began to come to me. Come on, rise up. Rise up. Rise up. Rise up. Rise up. Rise up, Canada. Rise up. Rise up. Rise up. Rise up. Rise up. Rise up, Canada. Rise up. Debout le Canada. Debout le Canada. Debout le Canada. Rise up. Rise up. Rise up, Canada. Time to change the government. Rise up. Time to change the government. Rise up, Canada. Rise up. Rise up. Thank you so much for being here tonight. Rise up.